In the early hours of April 5, 1923, wealthy British aristocrat Lord Carnarvon lay thrashing in a Cairo hotel room, consumed by a raging fever. At exactly 1:55 a.m., he took his final breath. And in that precise moment, the entire city of Cairo went completely dark. Thousands of miles away in England, Carnarvon's beloved pet dog Susie suddenly let out a piercing howl and dropped dead. Months earlier, Carnarvon had financed the opening of a 3,000-year-old Egyptian tomb. Rumors quickly spread that a clay tablet rested above the sealed door, bearing a terrifying promise: "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." Over the next 6 years, 22 different people connected to this specific archaeological dig suffered bizarre, fatal accidents. A secretary's father jumped from a 7th-floor window. The radiologist who x-rayed the mummy died of a sudden illness. These rapid, unexplainable events birthed the modern concept of the mummy's curse. The global public became entirely convinced that archaeologists had awakened a vengeful, supernatural god-king who was systematically hunting them down. The reality of that discovery began a year earlier, in November 1922. British archaeologist Howard Carter was on his final, desperate warning from his sponsor. After 15 years of fruitless digging in the Valley of the Kings, his funding was about to be cut. Then his workers uncovered a stairway cut into the rock. Behind a sealed door lay an untouched treasure trove of over 5,000 objects. There were solid gold coffins, walking sticks, and daggers forged from meteorite iron, all perfectly preserved exactly as they were left 3 millennia ago. But while newspapers painted the tomb's occupant as an omnipotent sorcerer striking down his enemies from beyond the grave, the actual body inside the golden coffin told a vastly different story. The dreaded Pharaoh was an 18-year-old boy named Tutankhamun. Modern autopsies and DNA analysis reveal he suffered from severe genetic disorders caused by generations of royal inbreeding. He had a clubfoot, walked with a cane, and was actively fighting multiple strains of malaria when he died. In his own time, Tutankhamun's reign was considered so politically shameful and insignificant that his immediate successors chiseled his name off monuments and deliberately wiped him from Egyptian historical records. Which leaves us with a massive historical paradox. We have to figure out how a frail, deliberately erased teenager with a club foot managed to become the most feared supernatural entity of the 20th century. The terrifying warning about death on swift wings that kicked off the global panic? That clay tablet never existed. It was entirely made up. The entire rumor traces back to a frustrated amateur journalist who couldn't get inside the excavation site. He asked the tomb's security guard if there were any ancient curses written on the walls. The guard gave a polite, non-committal smile and stayed silent. The reporter took that smile, walked away, and simply fabricated the terrifying inscription from scratch. In the 1920s, ruthless newspaper rivalries were eager for anything that would sell copies. One major paper had an exclusive contract for official updates from the tomb, so competing papers aggressively amplified the fabricated curse, prioritizing sensational tabloid gossip over basic archaeological facts. The hysteria was legitimized by highly respected intellectuals of the era. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, publicly stated his belief that an evil elemental spirit was responsible for the mysterious deaths, effectively turning cheap gossip into widely accepted scientific fact. The mummy's curse lacked any supernatural phenomenon at all. It is a textbook early case of mass media manufacturing a viral fake news hysteria to drive engagement. Once you look at the hard data, the mystical deaths dissolve completely. Lord Carnarvon wasn't struck down by a vengeful spirit, he accidentally sliced open a mosquito bite while shaving. In 1923, before the discovery of penicillin, a simple infection in the Egyptian summer heat was often a death sentence. The dramatic blackout in Cairo? The city's electrical grid in the 1920s was notoriously unreliable, and power cuts were incredibly common. As for his dog dying at the exact same moment, adjusting for international time zones between Cairo and England reveals the dog actually died hours later. There was one real biological threat inside the tomb, Aspergillus niger, a fungus that can survive for thousands of years in dark spaces. Breathing it in causes severe respiratory inflammation, but it was a completely treatable medical condition, not a sudden supernatural strike. A 2002 medical study tracked the 44 Westerners at the dig. Those who entered the tomb lived to an average age of 73, noticeably higher than the era's standard life expectancy. Exposure to the tomb statistically correlated with living a longer, healthier life. The most damning evidence against the curse is the survival of its primary targets. The very people who breached the tomb, physically dismantled the shrines, and unwrapped the mummy, lived completely normal, long lives. Howard Carter himself lived to the age of 64, surviving 16 years past the initial discovery. When relentless journalists constantly hounded him about his impending doom, his standard, dismissive response was always the same: "I am still alive." There is a core philosophical concept in ancient Egyptian culture regarding the afterlife. They believed a person only experiences true death when the last living person on earth stops speaking their name. When Tutankhamun's successors erased his name from the monuments to permanently kill him in the afterlife, they inadvertently created a historical blind spot. Because no one knew he existed, grave robbers never looked for him, leaving his tomb perfectly hidden in the sand. Because it was found entirely intact 3,000 years later, it sparked a fabricated newspaper lie that ended up printing Tutankhamun's name in every modern language across the globe. Through a paradoxical cocktail of deliberate historical erasure and 1920s fake news, a frail, forgotten boy king accidentally achieved the exact eternal immortality that every pharaoh desperately sought.